It starts with a spark that can change everything. But ideas don't come from nothing. They come from out there. Data and inspiration floating for the taking. And with the Internet of Things connecting us more than ever, we're committed to co-create a better tomorrow. The future is open to suggestions. This is social innovation. Hitachi, inspire the next.
If you could briefly, perhaps sort of starting here and working over there, introduce yourselves and sort of what you do and a slight overview and how it relates to water.
Thanks. So good afternoon. It's nice to see all of you. Hopefully get a chance to meet a few more faces. My name's Kim Murata. I am the Global Senior Director of Corporate Responsibility at Molson Coors. Molson Coors is the third largest brewer in the world. I have been part of the brewing industry since about 2004. I worked for the US subsidiary Miller Coors, so Miller Lite and Coors Light, prior to joining the global team just last December. From a water perspective, I lead our sustainability initiatives and strategy. So when we look at what's most material to our business, or what is our greatest risk, certainly water is one of the most important things that we focus on.
Good afternoon. My name is Lila Partridge, and I am CEO of WeGoWise. WeGoWise, as in water, electricity, gas, and oil. And we look at the data that comes off these buildings, but specifically in terms of data analytics, to help building owners and managers reduce their energy and water consumption. And so on this panel, I probably represent the technology piece. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I've been working in technology for well over 20 years. I'm very passionate about using technology in ways that we can, facilitate all sorts of improvements in our lives, and in this case, obviously, help with improving sustainability. The other area that I've been really focusing on is buildings, and that has a lot to do particularly with cities. One of the areas where we certainly see in some of the themes that came up earlier today is where does policy intersect with the private sector and other markets. And what we see is that the cities are in fact driving a lot of water and energy reduction. And that's because cities want to grow, and the infrastructure to supply energy and water are old and cannot really support a lot of growth. And so the way the cities are actually responding is by putting in place benchmarking, putting in place different kinds of laws that have reduction of energy use by buildings. And that's because in the cities, 70% of the energy is used by buildings. So they really are working on water and also on energy to reduce it. And I'm delighted to be on this panel to talk more about that. Thank you. And Josh.
Hi, my name is Josh Uniti, CEO of Peace Dining Corporation. I probably think you guys don't know as much. We are one of the largest sushi Japanese cuisine provider through the supermarkets as well as the corporate cafeterias in the Europe and the United States with the different brand names. So we've been doing for the last 20 years sustainable seafood when people don't care much at that time. So we are kind of leaders of sustainability of seafood and being closely working with the Whole Foods market in the United States and different supermarket chains throughout the Europe and the US. We are also the first company certified ISO 14001 as a sushi providers. So really care for the sustainability as one of our key core values. So any decisions making processes in our company is also depending on is this decisions impacting the environment positively or negatively. So for us, sustainability and water and everything is very, very important. And I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you. And I suppose one of the fundamental paradoxes surrounding water, and Adam Smith and others have picked up on this many, many years, is that water is of immeasurable value ultimately to life, and yet it is plagued, and its distribution is plagued by kind of inadequate pricing. How is it, do you think, Kim, that sort of companies are changing their sort of approach to water? Because obviously, you guys couldn't make beer without it. Has there been a shift in the way you think about it in recent years?
Sure. I think they're probably our best example. When Miller Brewing Company and Coors Brewing Company came together to form Miller Coors in 2008, we set at that time long-term goals, which were to 2015. And we looked at a water efficiency target. At that time, we were using about 4 barrels of water to produce 1 barrel of beer, and the global benchmark was about 5 to 1. But we knew that by 2015, we wanted to get to 3.5 barrels of water to produce 1 barrel of beer. And so we set this target and got on with our business and talked about our next step. Well, at the end of the year, we were still at about 4.1. I'm like, okay, this is going to be investment in capital, probably 80% investment in capital and maybe 20% investment in culture, but let's keep on keeping on. And so at the end of the next year, we were at 4.09. And we thought, wow, okay, we're not really winning this battle here, not really making a lot of progress that we had hoped. So we took a team, plant managers and executives, and we went down to South America. And there were 3 breweries there that were part of our larger global network at the time. And we went into the breweries, and what we learned immediately is that when you invest in water, it's an 80% investment in culture and people, and 20% investment in capital. And so we took those learnings back, and we brought them to our breweries, and we set up water safaris and water war rooms. We heard from our steam fitters, no one's ever asked me about my thoughts on how to save water. And everybody solicited ideas and opinions. And in Milwaukee, we put the top 50 together. In Golden, in Colorado, we went on a safari. We looked at water differently, as opposed to just water, as it comes in and leaves the system, but water when we cool, water when we heat, water when evaporates, and looked at all the different processes, and then put people in charge. We would have people in our breweries, they would see the cans coming through the pasteurizer, and there might be a little bit more water on top. In the past, you'd have to stop, talk to a supervisor, see if you needed to make change. But when the culture was there, you could actually stop the pasteurizer, look at the nozzles and the valves, make an immediate change, and then continue on. And we did that in every step. Our rinsing, instead of just rinsing 20 minutes after every brand, we thought to ourselves, maybe this one can be 18 minutes. Maybe this can be 17 minutes. Maybe we don't have to rinse in between these 2 brands. And so we just got people involved, got the culture involved. At the end of last year, 2016, we were at 3.2. And now we're working on a global target for all of Molson Coors, and most likely it'll be even lower than that, probably much closer to 3.0 by 2025.
That's fantastic. And Josh, sort of as someone who works with seafood, perhaps the initial assumption might be, you care more about the ocean, but how has Peace Dining Corporation's attitude to actually, freshwater changed in recent years? What kind of initiatives are you undertaking?
To be honest, our company has not actively engaging to reduce the usage of fresh waters per se for the past 20 years, more focused on the sustainability seafood side. However, what we can do is we have a central kitchen producing some sushi in New York City, for example. We actually start setting up some specific goals and target. Let's say, let's cut the 10% every year for the usage of the water, even though growth rates are 20% every year. And I'm very proud of my team members that they achieved 27% for the last few years for the cutting the usage of water. So I think the importance of having the clear goals in the each for the each unit level, I think that's the success of the reducing the usage of water. Having said that, as you all know, 2.5% of entire water on the earth is only fresh water. And out of that, I'm talking about the industry usage of that is probably around 20% and 10% household usage, right? And about another 70% is actually used by agriculture. Now, do I have the KPIs or screening process of the, let's say, choosing the proper rice farmers that they are more sustainable usage of water? At this moment, it's not. However, as example, to make just 1 bag of 2 pounds of 1 bag of rice, you know how much water requires? 800 gallons to even 1,300 gallons of water required just 1 bag of 2 pounds of rice. So that's how much needed for us to live, to eat day to day. And I think as a corporate responsibility that how can we make this type of new KPIs or new measurement into the screening process of who we should buy from, not just for the quality or taste, pricing, but should we add those kind of sustainability responsibility showing by those farmers. And I think those are additional criteria that not just is this organic or non-organic or not, it's additional criteria, but is it sustainable or not. I think those are, next steps for us at this moment. I'm not saying we are doing it yet, but we are trying to do by ourselves first, and then, but I see eventually this is going to be a key criteria that people start thinking to choosing the right vendors to work with.
I'm very glad you brought up rice because it's a staple food crop for millions and millions of people around the world, but also there's that assumption that you have to flood rice to make it grow. That's not actually true. It's a tough crop, so it survives flooding, and that's an easy way to irrigate. But Josh, do you sort of work with farmers or sort of organizations that actually try and promote better watering practices, better irrigation practices? Sort of how granular is your involvement?
As I said, at this moment, we are not involving in that level yet. We have been involving more sustainable seafood side. I go to Philippines and I actually meet with the fishermen. All seafood, tuna, for example, coming from single line code tuna. So I meet with all the fishermen with a small, tiny boat, and I will thank them to fishing for us and things like that. Again, since we have been doing this for 20 years in terms of the sustainability seafood side, and I think that it's now time to go to the next level. I talk about the water things. But again, it's only few farmers making the large rice factories or large rice farms in California. So I think it would be, takes time to cultivate and influence and develop those responsible farmers. And
Lila, sort of on this, I mean, perhaps the incentives for private actors are clearer here on conserving water. I know that you do a lot of work with more public entities. How is thinking changing there on how to treat water?
Sure. I think that we spend a lot of time in multifamily, which is apartment buildings. And in particular, there's been a push, as I said earlier, by cities and other entities to try to get more efficient utilities and water in that area. One area which is interesting is that we see the intersection of government and nonprofits and commercial entities working together in this direction. And specifically not the federal government. The federal government, even under Obama, was not as active as the cities. And as I said, the cities are constrained for growth based on the infrastructure for water and also energy. And that's really motivating them to look at policies, look at bills, look at ways in which to begin to encourage building owners to reduce all of the usage there. And so they've started to do a fair amount with nonprofits like IMT and NRD. In some instances, those nonprofits will even give warm bodies, put them in the governor's office, and start to do the entire infrastructure to support the kind of measurements. So a lot of what has changed on a policy level has to do with being able to measure. So we do data and data analytics. We help actual companies, particularly building owners and managers, to collect data about water and to report it into EPA's portfolio manager or other sources. And that then creates a kind of a centralized location off which government, nonprofits, and others can begin to look at water usage and energy usage. And it's that intersection that enables other kinds of behaviors from capital markets. So we're seeing things like green loans from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, also kind of governmental agencies, and they're incenting, again, more efficient usage of water in particular. And that has a sort of self-perpetuating effort within the built environment. So building owners want to reduce their costs. They're being told by compliance requirements in the cities that they must report. They report, they start tracking, and suddenly, just by tracking, they start reducing their usage because they weren't paying attention. And we see quite a bit of reduction just by people starting to pay attention and report it.
And perhaps a question more for you and Kim, sort of how difficult is it to track water flows? Because, you know, the fact that it moves between people is part of the, you know, the complicated, its complicated nature. You know, is it a public good? Is it a private good? What are the very basic steps for beginning to measure?
I think there are different business models. You can talk more to the commercial kind of manufacturing side, but the business model that you would have in a data center where there's infinite amount of revenue in that building, they measure everything. They have sensors for everything, water, HVAC systems. And when you get into residential buildings, apartment buildings and homes, that's not so easy. So we're just beginning to see sensors and other ways that you can actually measure water real time kind of moving into those markets. I would say that there is a huge demand going now, people looking at it for the simple reason that apartment buildings, or almost all, majority were built prior to 1950 in the United States. So commercial buildings built in the last 20 or 30 years, so they're pretty good. But you see PVC and other kind of piping that's been in these old apartment buildings that are now beginning to leak. And so the infrastructure is driving a lot of owners to avoid costs and beginning to measure them. So we're starting to see that. Now you probably do much more than that, right, in the sensor manufacturing side, yeah.
And it's a little bit earlier, or a little bit easier because it's our brewery.
Right, exactly.
So it's a little bit easier, but the place that we have a little tougher time measuring is we've done watershed risk assessments for all of our breweries. And what we want to understand is, do we have access issues, quality, quantity, you know, and how do we address those? So in some of our areas where we have, like California, Texas, and Colorado, where we see water stressed or water scarce conditions, we want to make sure that there's a long-term availability of water for development, for the people in the communities, for businesses, and for agriculture. So we work collaboratively with government, businesses, other water users, and agriculture in putting in programs. And then we try to measure how much water gets restored to a watershed. Coca-Cola is one of the groups or companies that came out first with this replenish target, and many of us in the food and beverage have followed that lead. We've got a program here in Texas. It's been going since about 2011. We have over 200 farmers, landowners, and growers, because we have a brewery in Fort Worth. And I don't know how many people are from Texas, but the Fort Worth Brewery relies on the Trinity River watershed, which supplies 40% of the water to the state of Texas. And so we brought other water users, the Tarrant Regional Water District municipality together, as well as the federal government through NRCS. And we have contributed to this program and have restored over 1.5 billion gallons of water back to the Trinity. And so we're really excited about that, just that collaborative nature, the partnership nature, and everybody focused on what works well.
And on that watershed analysis that I imagine is so important, how do you factor in climate change into that? Because it's not just sort of when water falls, it's in what form precipitation appears, and how do you try and plan for kind of greater interannual and intra-annual variability that we are likely to see in certain places?
There's a benchmark that a lot of companies use. It's the World Resource Institute benchmark. Mm-hmm. And so there's several factors when you do your assessment that you rely on, climate change being one of them. How you do you have water rights? What do you pay for the water? How much water do you use? How much water is returned? What's the wastewater? Is it back to the municipality? All of those. And so when you look at the long-term availability of water, certainly climate change is one of the impacts. And that helps you somewhat predict whether you're going to have a water-stressed or water-scarce region. And then, but it's not just those issues. In the UK, we see issues with regard to flooding. So how do we plan? We put in anaerobic digesters to help control the wastewater that we are discharging, which hopefully then will help with the flooding issues. Or in India, where we have breweries, we've got access to clean water issues there. So in every one of those communities, we try to look at the local needs and then work together collaboratively to address.
And I would sort of echo the communities are important. Water is often very localized. The issues of water are very local. Think of California several years ago where they really had a drought issue. And it was the public awareness in combination with the governor and really putting in place constraints that actually had a noticeable difference. It's working at both together that can really make a difference.
Mm-hmm. It's a shortish panel for a massive topic, so I'm going to open it up to the floor in case there are any questions. You can also, of course, submit them through the app. But sort of in the meantime, perhaps while people are thinking of those questions, Lila, I just have one more for you, and it might be a slightly unfair one, I'm not sure, but obviously, buildings are a huge, require a huge amount of water. In part because so much water goes into cement. I mean, is that something you factor in as well, or it's purely sort of what water is being used in the building at the time it's being built? But in future, do you see, cement companies perhaps coming forward and saying, help, we need to cut this back?
We don't really spend that much time in the development side. That's a great question, so I can't really speak to that. We really look more in terms of older buildings and trying to help anyone who owns and operates those buildings to do it more efficiently. And that's really where a lot of the data collection, which is hard to get, because the buildings are old, and a lot of times you're trying to get data from utilities, and every single city in the United States has their own water utility. Some of them are extremely sophisticated. You can get 15-minute interval data from Chicago, you can get daily data from Boston, and then you also have Podunk, Iowa, where you probably have a little old lady who doesn't even measure the meter every quarter, and you have a little estimated pay per bill, and you have everything. So if you're going to try to make any kind of an impact, you have to deal with all the different sources of data. Can't really speak to the development side, but certainly on the management and operating side, there's even a data issue there as well.
Of course. Just check back in with the floor over here. No, okay, fantastic. And just sort of a question, I suppose, for each of you. What lessons are you learning that could, Kim, you mentioned sort of your breweries in India. I'm really interested in kind of what America can teach other countries now this sort of water message seems to be getting through. I mean, what can be transplanted technologically, perhaps?
I think just picking up on the question that we had talked about with the supply chain or the rice farmers. So what we've had the great opportunity as a brewer is we know our growers. We have worked directly with our growers for decades. In fact, one of our growers has been growing for us for 60 years, and last year at Barley Days, we celebrated his 100th birthday. God, I got so excited I couldn't even say it. 100th birthday. So we've got this great relationship. If you're a Pepsi or a Coke, you don't always know your supply chain. You don't always know where you're sourcing. So we have an opportunity. We've been working with them directly on sustainability. We actually put in a data management system where we can track water, energy, nitrogen, fertilizer, proteins, yields, and a variety of areas, and benchmark with all of our growers to not only learn best practices, but share best practices. And then we have collaborative partnerships where we've done everything from new barley variety that requires less input to soil moisture monitoring probes, variable rate irrigation, GPS, turning off irrigation earlier, all the different things that we help support our growers and help save water and help save valuable resources. And we're going to take that and expand it to other areas. So how do we take it to Canada and perhaps look for new opportunities to grow barley in Canada? How do we take it to the UK? How do we take it to Central Europe? And that's some of our plans as we're moving forward to take those best practices.
So we've got loads of water in the UK, don't worry.
How would I answer it? I take a different perspective on it. I would say the United States, most of the people in my company are under the age of 30, and they work for us because we're a mission-driven company, really looking to reduce energy and water use in buildings, and they're passionate about it. I mean, they really, really are interested in sort of working in an area that they want to make a difference and leave the world a better place. So I think that passion combined with technology, data analytics, the ability to actually start thinking about how one can impact by just providing information. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So the first step is to take data and then measure it. And I think that is one of the areas the United States is particularly good at. Technology companies, innovative, young talent, really looking to make a difference, and I expect we'll do more there.
I think in the US around 1997, 8-ish, people start drinking bottled waters. And before that, fine with the tap waters. And nobody want to expect to pay $7 water at the restaurant, as we do right now. I think that people are aware of the water, and now you have to pay for it. It's our scarce resources as well. But it's not aware of it. This is those agricultural also consuming 70% fresh water to produce the food you eat every day. And then once we start putting practices and the more pressure on the farmers and growers, and again, there's got to be cost involved. are we willing to start paying extra cost to it? I think those are more like a corporate decisions in terms of making process of the pricing and the negotiating and educating the consumer as well as the farmers would be the next step, because it was still hidden. It's not showing up every day like a bottled water. But I think that would be next trend, and for the next decades is happening.
And I would add one more thing. I think capital markets are actually moving. I know some of the other panels were talking about this, but in the building space, we see it in two places. We see Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and HUD offering green loans. And what they're doing is they're kind of aggregating underwritten loans which have a discount if you begin to sort of attain certain sustainability, and often it's water reduction. And then those are actually sold in the secondary market in a way that the discount is picked up by investors who want green loans. And again, this is measurable. So this isn't just, oh, yes, we'll do it once. There's ongoing measurements associated with that asset. So I think the capital markets are really supporting that. And CalPERS came out last November saying that if you want money from us for real estate purchases, then you will do GRESB reporting. It's a very long, very in-depth analysis that's done once a year on sustainability of all the buildings, and it comes out of Europe. But these are ways that the capital markets are pushing the commercial and the built environment, which is really encouraging.
No, CalPERS is doing some absolutely fascinating stuff on many areas, but exactly particularly water. But I think it is probably time that we get the answer from our initial polling question in. So if we could have that back up on the screen, that would be fantastic. The following is the most threatening impact of climate change with respect to water. And 57% of our assembled audience reckon that the political fallout from the increasing variability of water availability is the scariest aspect of that. Perhaps, Kim, I mean, that's kind of a fascinating outcome, actually. I mean, obviously, the two are interconnected. But so politically, obviously, it's very difficult to impose proper pricing of water. That's why politicians don't like to do it, particularly in places such as India. But there's kind of a political fallout, for companies, and Coca-Cola certainly has sort of suffered at various points because of this. If you don't properly, sort of cut back on water and source it properly. I mean, does this sort of chime with what you understand?
I think somebody did a late vote, because I think I saw the bar go up.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, it's only 55% now. Yeah.
Because I actually would have voted on the other side.
Yeah.
I think what concerns me more are the weather patterns.
Yes.
And the impact that can have on a business, whether it is in the UK with flooding. I mean, our Tadcaster Brewery faced really serious flooding issues, or and certainly from agriculture is so important to our business, and availability for water in California is and remains still a very big concern of ours. So I would have voted on the other side. I think that's a bigger issue. From a political and a PR standpoint, you need to mine it and monitor it and be on top of it and proactive, but I see the other.
Yeah. And I suppose, sort of, Lila, as you were saying, I mean, the political fallout is so tricky because even in America, there are thousands and thousands of different water entities, and because water is so heavy to transport, necessarily, local politicians are involved. I mean, which way would you have voted?
I think I would probably also, it's a mixed, I could see both sides of this. So I think on the political side, what I am seeing is that, again, it's local issues. So politically, it's going to be very local, and therefore it has very, to the extent to which you think about it from that perspective, then I think the political fallout on the federal level doesn't really concern us as much.
No.
And so then you're looking more in terms of what's actually happening with some of the broader, global issues of warming and sustainability impact from that.